Well, let's change the pace. Time to bring you the day's business news. I'm joined here in the studio by France 24's Cole Stangler. Good to have you, Cole. Let's talk a little bit about this stimulus plan in the US, set to be signed by President Joe Biden on Friday.
That's right, a $1.9 trillion relief plan. Now, that's slightly more than the first COVID relief package passed last March, but more than double the amount of stimulus approved to fight the Great Recession back in 2009, with another round of direct payments to millions of Americans and more aid to states and cities. The plan's designed to curb the downturn today, but it could also strike a more lasting blow against poverty in the U.S. Lawrence Berstecker explains.
It's one of the largest stimulus measures in U.S. history and has been hailed by some as a new war on poverty.
You will receive $1,400 checks by the end of March. Half of America's children who are in poverty will not be in poverty because of this bill. Help is on the way.
Besides the $1,400 stimulus checks, which will provide immediate relief for millions of Americans, the bill includes several measures intended to benefit the poor. It will extend federal unemployment benefits, expand healthcare subsidies and food stamps, and provide financial support for various state welfare programs. Another major provision aims to convert an existing parental tax credit into a child allowance, effectively providing a guaranteed income for families with children. In the streets of New York, residents largely welcomed the plan, yet some questioned whether it was doing enough to tackle poverty in the long run.
It will benefit slightly, but I think it needs to be more done. I think we should get a monthly payment, which will help out the economy a lot better, because people still out here without jobs and unemployment.
Studies estimate the American Rescue Plan could cut poverty by a third and child poverty by half in 2021, lifting millions out of poverty. Yet, with most of the bill's provisions either one-time only or set to expire next year, many are calling on the Biden administration to introduce more permanent measures.
Now, investors have long been craving more stimulus out of the U.S., but we're seeing a fairly muted response today, at least in Europe. Major indexes all hovering around the flat line. Some slight gains on the CAC 40 here in Paris. You can see there losses, though, in London and over in Frankfurt on the DAX. Oil prices also continuing to rise there. International Brent crude now trading around $68, nearly $69 a barrel. Earlier in the week, that price hit a yearly high around $70 a barrel after an attack on Saudi oil facilities.
Well, Cole, when it comes to Rolls-Royce, the shares are seeing some gains. That's despite the firm announcing a record annual loss for 2020.
That's right. The aircraft and engine maker says it lost some £4 billion last year. It's due in large part to the steep decline in travel, as Rolls-Royce earns profits from airlines that use its engines. The British firm is also in the midst of a major restructuring, which includes the elimination of some 7,000 jobs in its civil aviation sector. But its CEO says, quote, the worst is behind it. That optimism helping to drive the share price up over 1.5% today.
Well, Cole, investors will also be closely watching today's meeting of the European Central Bank's Governing Council. Talk us through that.
So that's just gotten underway today in Frankfurt with a press conference to follow. No major changes expected, but Bank Chief Christine Lagarde's words will be closely scrutinized. Worries are growing over a rise in bond yields and the prospects of higher inflation. There's concern over what that would mean for Eurozone interest rates. A hike in the cost of borrowing could significantly hurt Europe's recovery.
All right, well, we go to Australia now. It has a plan to boost its tourism sector. Good news there. It's been hit badly by the pandemic and, of course, the closing of the country's borders.
This plan was unveiled earlier today, designed to boost a sector that employs about 5% of Australians, with restrictions on international visitors projected to last well into the fall of this year. The government's hoping to encourage residents to pick up and travel within the country. Lauren Berstecker with the details.
A lifeline for Australia's struggling tourism industry. Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced a financial package worth over €750 million to help boost local travel and keep the sector afloat until the return of foreign tourists.
To keep people in their jobs, we've got to put planes in the air and we've got to put tourists on the ground. The Australian tourism industry needs more tourists.
In a bid to boost domestic tourism, the stimulus package includes plane ticket subsidies for Australians, allowing them to travel at half price. Another central measure provides low-interest loans for small operators and tourism companies. Last but not least, the plan includes 130 million euros in financial support for the country's two biggest airlines, Virgin Australia and Qantas Airways. Both companies, which have been forced to slash thousands of flights and ground most of their fleets due to travel restrictions, said the subsidies would help them stay in business until international borders reopen.
Now, we know international is some time off. It's probably not going to happen until the end of October. And the great thing about this package is it gets us ready. It allows us to keep those employees, the 7,500 people connected to the airline.
A central pillar of Australia's economy, tourism generates more than 3% of GDP and employs around 5% of the country's workforce. With international borders closed for the past year, the sector has been relying on government support and on a rise in domestic travel to survive, as it waits for the return of foreign visitors.
Well, good news there for Australia's tourism sector. Finally, from you, Cole, a factory in Spain is seeing an uptick in sales, you might see. This owing to a certain Netflix series that some of our viewers might know.
Yeah, the family-run Rechapados Ferrer has seen a surge in demand. That's after its chessboards appeared in the series The Queen's Gambit, about a young chess prodigy. It's seen annual orders double this year. As the company's CEO explains, their ties to the series involve a little bit of luck.
Casualidades, pues también por casualidad un fabricante de fichas que era distribuidor de juegos de mesa de la zona compraba unos tableros de China, unos tableros de papel, pero él fabricaba unas fichas de madera de una calidad buena y quería unos tableros acordes con esta calidad. Y a raíz de ahí se pusieron en contacto con mis abuelos, con mi padre, y empezaron con la producción de tableros de ajedrez.
Now, Michelle, apparently there are just 14 employees at that factory, so it seems like they have a lot of work to do to churn out those chessboards with all that demand.
Definitely. I'm looking for a new chessboard, so I know where to head. Thank you for that, Cole, in the Business Roundup.